Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you, Yasir, for that small segment report. MashaAllah, we can see the people there and all the different people that have come for this procession, holding the banner of Arbaeen Hussein. People from different backgrounds, Arab, Iranian, Afghani, Pakistani, some revert brothers as well from Africa, West Indies, and also people from all over the UK, not just London, all gathering together to commemorate Arbaeen. I'd like to welcome my next guest, and it is the one and only Brother Zameen. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, great to see you.
It's good to see you. And for those of you who don't remember, Brother Zameen was there presenting the Muharram programs about 2 years ago. Muharram is so, it's very, very busy and it's very, very impactful. Do you think we lose that when it comes to Arbaeen, or do you think it's just as passionate and just as powerful as Arbaeen?
No, I think it's very, very passionate because with Ashura, for example, there's a lot of sadness and the focus is mourning, whereas I feel for Arbaeen, the big focus is to make it public. So you see everyone making an effort, even if it's for 5 minutes, to come to the march. As you just saw in the TV series, in the interviews beforehand, people come from all over the UK here just to make a stand. So I think making it public is a very, very important thing for us. And Arbaeen, you never disappointed. It's always packed here.
MashaAllah. And for the viewers that are watching, how has your experience been today? What have you seen? What's the atmosphere like?
Yeah, so my favourite thing during these marches is to kind of sit back and soak it in. Similar to when I go to Iraq. So when I go to Karbala, I always like to sit at the entrance of the Haram, of the shrine, and see different people, different backgrounds walk in and their reactions. And likewise here, I just enjoy going through the march. I don't stand around, I walk from the back to the front, and you just hear a mixture of languages, cultures, different expressions. And I think it just shows how beautiful the whole space is, that every single language, nationality, culture is around here, showing to respect to Imam Hussein in their own ways. And I think that's the beauty of this. And I love it every single time. It gives me, I'm shocked and I'm in awe all the time of it.
MashaAllah. Have you been to Karbala in Arbaeen time?
I have been, but it was a few years ago now, 2013 I think.
Wow.
It's been a while. I've been to Iraq outside of that. But as a teacher, I can only go during holiday time. So in 2013, it fell in Christmas holidays. So I got lucky there. So I'll never forget that.
Well, it's slowly coming towards September, August time. So inshallah.
In the heat.
I want to ask you the difference between Arbaeen in Iraq and Arbaeen here in London. Is there a vast difference, or do you still feel that spirituality of Arbaeen Hussein?
Oh, I definitely feel it here. I mean, you can't compare it to Iraq, obviously, but I really feel that the people bring Karbala to Iraq, to London. And that's one of the emotions I feel. Karbala has come to London. You see the flags, you see the mock shrines and the Zari, for example, and you can't help but think that Karbala has arrived here. The Mawqif as well, the service, the love you get. So definitely the best we can do is bring that vibe over here, and I think we do that for sure.
Now, you are a teacher and you actually teach religious education. You actually teach Shia Islam also in religious education. So let's start off with Muharram. Is that part of the syllabus? Is it an important part? Do you tackle it as a commemoration and it's a part of the culture and tradition, or is it more tackled with history? How do you teach?
Yeah, so it's really good that since 2016, Ashura has been on the curriculum in the education system here in the UK. So the way we tackle Ashura is look at it as it is, a religious event marking an important time in history. We obviously have to look at the history behind it and look at why it actually happened. But after that, we look at the different ways people mourn it. And that involves things like beating of the chest, poetry, the majlis, wearing black, everything you can think of, we cover that in the curriculum. So part of my job as a Shia RE teacher is I do a lot of work where I train RE teachers across the country to make them well equipped to teach it properly in their classrooms. Because what you don't want is for it to be portrayed inaccurately, and sometimes the negative bias that we know about sometimes that we have. But it's really, really great to see people embracing it, especially people who aren't Shia or aren't Muslim. They're fascinated by it quite big time. So I really love doing that, and you would find in the next 5-6 years, hopefully when people grow up and come out of school, they know what this space is, know what Ashura is, and know what Karbala is. So that's the aim, and hopefully we get there, inshallah.
I want to develop more on that, people's reaction to Muharram, because as you know, maybe some aspects of Muharram and the Azadari may not be easily digestible or maybe difficult to understand. In your experience, how is Muharram received? Do people think of it like, oh, it's like Easter, the way Christians mourn and commemorate the tragedy and the trials of Jesus? Is it similar to that? Or do they look at it as a brand new fascination? Oh wow, like a cultural experience. What's the reactions of non-Muslims that you feel that you've experienced yourself?
Yeah, so there's two angles you can look at it from. The first angle is that I'm a big believer you have to speak to people in the language that they know. So like you mentioned, it's very difficult to explain Imam Hussein to a Christian without speaking about Jesus and the passion of Easter and the suffering that he went through. That's kind of your way in so that the Christian community feel a familiarity with it. But on the other side, a lot of people haven't heard of it. So when they do hear about it, the first thing they think is, why haven't we heard about this before? You know, for them, maybe you can refer to it when you went to school. If it was mentioned, it was a small box in a book somewhere with a little paragraph. But now the requirement is to know it in a lot of detail. So all they knew about it was that someone called Hussein died and Shias beat themselves because they're sad about it. It's not much more than that. And I truly feel that people appreciate the richness of it, the tradition behind it, the history behind it, and I think it's a really, really big deal for them. So I think, alhamdulillah, from one side, there's an emotional reaction as well to it, that this is a very beautiful story and a tragic story, but the other side is that this is quite beautiful, and I think we need to know about it quite big time. So from both angles, it's embracing there for sure. Our job is not to make people agree with what we do. That's not our job. Our job is to tell us what we do and the reasoning behind it, and the rest is up to the people.
Fantastic. We're going to go to Yasser, who's on the march, I believe, with the interview, and shall we come back to this discussion? Over to Yasser.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is Yasser Mansour, and here I have one of the participants that's walking in the Arbaeen procession. Can I ask your name, please?
Yara.
Mansour. MashaAllah. Mansour, before I asked you to come to interview you, you went and said, I want to do ziyarah to the horse. Could I ask you what that horse represents and why you went to it?
I went to it because it's associated with my Mawla Imam Hussein alayhi salam. It's a message to the world that, look, there's just two groups in the world, I believe, Husseini and Yazidi. And we are in the Husseini group, inshallah, and here and hereafter.
This horse, when you went to it and touched it and said whatever you said, do you think that will link you back to Imam Al Hussein alayhi salam?
Of course. Anything associated with Imam, anything else, anything ziyarah, alam, everything. These are all these elements which make the azar even beautiful. So this is part of it, and I've been taught by my father, by my forefather, you know, we've been doing it forever.
The sun's body, my heart shatters upon this sight. Our dead son, your arms carry. We sit beside his torn body, and your tears you shed with me. We watched him blossom, watched him grow. Now our son, we
Thank you very much. In Marble Arch Centre of London, as you can see behind me, so many different people, different backgrounds are here to commemorate Arbaeen and do the procession. At least 10-15,000 people have come from all over the UK. I'm still with my guest, Samir. Assalamu alaikum, Samir.
Alaikum salam.
Let's continue our discussion. We're talking about Muharram, we're talking about introducing Muharram to, you know, the non-believers and the non-Muslims. And we're talking about the Arbaeen experience. Do you also teach Arbaeen in your syllabus? Do you teach it as history, or do you go down the pilgrimage route? Because as you know, so many millions go towards Karbala to do the Mashayikh and so on. So how do you teach Arbaeen in the curriculum?
So Arbaeen itself is not on the curriculum, but it's a natural thing you would teach if you teach Ashura. So the way we tackle it is to look at it as a pilgrimage. So one thing that I do teach is ziyarah. You can't teach Shia Islam without taking ziyarah as an alternative pilgrimage to Hajj. Obviously, we do emphasize that it's not replacing Hajj whatsoever. Hajj is one of the things you have to do, but Ziyarah is also very, very important as a supplement to it. So the way we do it is a pilgrimage, and again, the whole idea behind it is to show not just you visiting there, but the journey towards there. I remember a couple of years ago, I did a big conference where I did training on Ziyarah, and I did a session on Ziyarah itself as an alternative pilgrimage to Hajj. And I showed them videos and clips of kind of the mawqibs and the journey you take towards there and how people beg you to come towards it. And again, one thing you have to teach in the syllabus is the 10 furu'ud-din. One of them we know is Tawalla. And one of the best forms of Tawalla is the Arbaeen pilgrimage itself and Ashura itself. So one way to teach that is through the expression of Arbaeen and the pilgrimage there, where people are begging you through the love of Imam Hussein that we want to serve you, and the pilgrim status is very, very big. So that's one way we teach it as a big pilgrimage act.
MashaAllah. And then what about Arbaeen introducing it to non-Muslims? How would you go about that? Would you introduce it as a pilgrimage, or would you introduce it as a commemoration like we have today? Obviously, a lot of these people cannot be in Karbala and be part of the actual Mashaya and the real Arbaeen that's done in Karbala. But is this a good way to introduce it to non-Muslims?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for the people who are here kind of watching, they can really see what's happening here, and it's very, very curious. They ask these questions. I think what's also interesting is that one way you can kind of look in is that you can relate as well. When you go to a football match, is a big mirror image of a pilgrimage. You walk towards the stadium, people dressed a certain way, you're chanting certain things, flags are there, scarves, and when you get to the area you're in, you are in a joint belief that you want the team to win together, and you have that one goal where your team wins. Likewise with the pilgrimage, it's got a big parallel there, obviously not to compare, but a good way in, because remember, the majority of the UK is not religious whatsoever. So for them, the pilgrimage is a very alien act. You have to do it in a way that they can understand it, and a football match is a good way to do it. Once you get that way in, you get to understand that actually the whole purpose of a pilgrimage is the walking aspect, is the togetherness aspect, and the devotional aspect. I think that's the way in. But the second thing, obviously, you can't go without talking about what we actually do. What the flags mean, what the black clothes mean, what the drums mean, what the different cultures mean. So one thing I'm very big on is this outside of Islam as well, is that people express religion in different ways, depending on where you come from, your worldview, and where you grew up and your experiences. So it's very important for us to really look at how Arbaeen is not one way to do it, there's several ways to do it. I think this pilgrimage and this march today that we see is a beautiful expression of that, where you see different cultures, as I mentioned earlier, coming together, expressing Imam Hussein in their own language and in their own way.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Brother Zameen. And we're over to Yasir, who has another guest. Inshallah, over to you, Yasir.